Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Spotlight series on shared ownership, brought to you by Square Roots. I'm Jay Turnstile from Share to Buy, and I'm joined today by Alex Sloan from Square Roots and Roots Hendon from Sensio Financial, and we're going to be looking at all the ways you can prepare to buy your new home. So straight into it, Alex, could you just give us a little bit of kind of why looking to buy your home would be better than renting?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's always lots of people's dream to actually buy their first home. So I think that's one of the big drivers. And I think with Square Roots and shared ownership, this is an alternative way to be able to buy a property and be able to get onto the property ladder at potentially an earlier stage in their life. So with compared to renting, obviously with renting you've got tenancy agreements. They can only last essentially a year, 2 years. You've got rents that can continue to go up and fluctuate. We've seen, especially kind of this last year, where rents have increased massively due to the demand, and landlords kind of really kind of trying to maximise those rents. Whereas with buying a home, you've got that stability. You don't have to worry about a tenancy agreement coming to an end. You can build equity within your home, especially in shared ownership. You can staircase and buy more shares in the future. And also, it's your place. You can do what you want with it to a certain extent. You can decorate it how you want. You can put up picture frames. You can do what you want with it to make it your own special home.
I love that. So even like those little bits of hanging pictures and stuff, it just makes it feel so much more like you and like your property. So I love that. Rupi, what about you? So obviously Sensio Financial are a mortgage broker company. What do you think are the benefits of buying rather than renting?
Well, it's an investable asset that goes up in price, and having equity in a property doesn't do you any harm. It helps you be a bit more financially inclusive, and it's not dead money, hopefully.
Fantastic. So I'm thinking for anyone that's kind of looking to buy this year, what should they consider? What should they be aware of?
I think the big one at the moment, and it's a big talking point, is obviously interest rates. I think Rupi could probably talk about it in more detail, but I think we're starting to see kind of interest rates kind of plateau a bit. But that's obviously a big one to be aware of in terms of how much you can borrow from a lender if you are looking to get a mortgage, but also the interest rates and the repayments is a big one.
Affordability is a big issue. I mean, apparently since 1650, the average rate of interest has been about 5%. So we had 15 years where we're hitting 2%, and everyone's got really used to that. Now this correction and reset, whatever you want to call it, is coming back in. And we're hitting 5-6%, but a lot of that's to ward off the inflation that was pent up. Once inflation starts coming down, hopefully interest rates start coming down. But even with interest rates being where they are, it's all going to be about affordability. What can you afford on a monthly basis? How much can you borrow? What size is your deposit?
So up to this point, we've obviously been talking about kind of buying in general, regardless of tenure. But for anyone that watched the last episode of this series Spotlight on shared ownership, we obviously covered a lot about the part-by-part rent scheme, shared ownership as a whole. So I just wonder, Alex, if, you know, for those who might think the shared ownership seems quite complex, if you can just kind of break it down a little bit more, if you have any kind of similar examples.
Yeah, of course. I think the first thing is straight away when people are trying to buy a home, you look at the average property price in London, it's over 500,000. They need to have a deposit of at least £50,000. They need to be earning a load of money on an annual basis. Whereas with shared ownership, it makes it more attainable, and as you say, it breaks it down. So buying a 25% share, whereas before you would have needed a £50,000 deposit, you actually need between a £5,000 to £10,000 deposit, and you're getting a mortgage on the remaining of that 25% share. So it just allows it to be more attainable. It gives you a smaller deposit. Also, the monthly outgoings are more attainable as well. If you look at it from £500,000, it's quite difficult to get there. But if you think about it from paying £1,500 a month, which potentially you would be paying towards your rent on a home, it just seems more doable.
More attainable.
Yeah.
Rupi, did you have anything to add?
I think it comes down to, in principle, you've got to look at the shared ownership scheme and say it's better to own something than nothing. And having a 25 or 40% share or 30% share or something better than having no share of something else. So that's number one, the principle. Premium-wise, it's affordable, it's attainable, which is very important, because if you're looking at a £500,000 property, with a 10% deposit, you've got to borrow £450,000. You've got to be on six figures. Not many 25, 30-year-olds are, but they can afford a slice. And it's better to have a slice than nothing at all.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, it can be so scary seeing that big number, the 500k, that kind of thing. But almost looking at it more bite-sized. So you're based on your affordability, and each month you'll only be paying this compared to what you're paying in the rental market. It's a really good way to look at it. I think it's quite a holistic approach. Alex, I know it's something we touched on in the last episode of this series, but it'd just be good for the viewers to get a bit of an understanding of Square Roots' like brand ethos and what sets you apart from other shared ownership providers.
Yep. No, so our ethos is that we want to build homes that we are proud to live in ourselves. So everything is about the quality, about the locations. We want to say London living without compromise. So we don't want buyers to have to go further out of London or even outside of London to buy a home. They want to live in an area that maybe they're renting in at the moment, and they want to stay there, and we want to be able to give them that opportunity to do so.
So Alex, for anyone that's looking to potentially buy, say, this year, what does Square Roots have available?
So we've got two fantastic developments available at the moment. So we've got Square Roots Lewisham, which is going to be coming up for completion in spring this year. It's a collection of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, in total 116 shared ownership units, but we've only got the last few remaining. So if you are looking in that area, it's worth coming down to our show home to visit, see what's remaining, because they are selling fast. We've then also got our flagship Square Roots development, which is actually our third development that we're releasing, which is Square Roots Hendon, and it consists of 236 shared ownership units in a great location, just a short walk from Hendon Station and Colindale Station, and that's going to be launching later this year as well.
Great, that's a lot of units, that's a lot of properties. Just for anyone that's kind of tuning in who's wondering more about the cost side of things, do either of you have any sort of figures that they should keep in mind, whether it's specific to these developments or figures, around interest rates, which I imagine are ever changing?
I think most of the people that are coming in to look at shared ownership now are coming from the rental market, and you've got to take a view. Everyone's situation is unique to themselves, but sit with an advisor and work out whether or not, good starting point, is this cheaper than renting? If it's cheaper than renting, start exploring more. And looking at figures, it's the size of your deposit, your income, the share you're buying. There's so many variables that give you an idea. £400,000 property, you buy a 25% share. And think, okay, that's a £100,000 share. I'll put 10% deposit down. That's £10,000. £90,000 mortgage. So work out how much that costs. And the rent works out around 2.75% of the remainder, so 3%, call it. So you can quickly do figures. So £9,000 for rent, £100,000 mortgage probably costs about £900. So they're the type of figures that you'll be looking at. Then it takes into account how much you're actually, your debt to income ratio, the interest rate you're going to use. So it's a complicated place to be, but find an advisor, talk to them, and start there.
So I think this session has been really useful, really insightful, and I'm sure you've helped a lot of people kind of on their home ownership journey. I mean, it's so difficult preparing to buy for your home, but it's very clear that Square Roots are trying to make that more seamless. And I think first-time buyers will love that. So that's all we're going to have time for today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for submitting your questions. We'll be back at a later date with the next episode of this. But in the meantime, visit squareroots.co.uk for more information about their developments, and don't forget to subscribe to their YouTube channel. Thanks very much. See you then.